Hello, I'm Bretton, one of our MCAT tutors here at Inspira Advantage, where we help students get into med school and other professional programs. Today, we will be discussing the anatomy and physiology of smell, taste, somatosensation, and the kinesthetic sense. Specifically, we'll be covering the detection of volatile and aerosolized chemicals by olfactory chemoreceptors, pheromones, and the detection of dissolved compounds by taste buds. The four touch modalities, nociception and proprioception. All of this is high yield because it could be on the biochem or psycho section. So you want to pay extra close attention as we finish up our lesson on the senses. Let's start with the most volatile of these senses, smell. Smell is essentially just the detection of volatile or aerosolized chemicals and is mediated by what we call olfactory chemoreceptors. Chemo means chemical, receptor means receptor, so receptors for different chemicals. These are located in the olfactory epithelium, which is right in here. And if we zoom in, we can see it on the right as our olfactory epithelium. These receptors are located in the upper part of the nasal cavity and are stimulated when odorant molecules bind to them. Odorant molecules are just the chemicals that are binding to those chemoreceptors we talked about earlier. The olfactory epithelium contains three main cell types: olfactory sensory neurons, supporting epithelial cells, and basal cells. The olfactory sensory neurons are responsible for actually doing the detection and signaling of the odorant molecules, while the supporting cells provide structural support and maintain the proper environment for the olfactory sensory neurons, where the basal cells are responsible for generating new olfactory sensory neurons throughout life. So the basal cells are what replenish our sensory neurons. Interestingly, if you think back to the COVID pandemic, when people were losing their sense of smell, a lot of people were really concerned. They thought, oh, is this going into our neurons and killing neurons? The latest science suggests that no, that was not the case. It was actually the supporting cells that were becoming inflamed and dying. Now, some of this inflammation may have caused nearby neurons to also die, but ultimately, it wasn't that the virus was infecting the neurons, it was that it was infecting the supporting and maybe basal cells around it. Kind of interesting, helps it stick. Now, further, something interesting with the olfactory system is that it's unique in the way that it bypasses the thalamus. It sends information directly to the olfactory bulb in the brain, which then sends information to other areas of the brain for processing, such as the amygdala and hippocampus. These are all involved in emotional and memory processing. This is why when you smell something, it can often evoke an emotional memory. The olfactory system is also important when we look at pheromones. Pheromones are another type of chemical signal that are given off by animals and have an effect on social foraging and sexual behavior. Pheromones can signal aggression, mating readiness, and other social cues. In other animals, they are detected by the vomeronasal organ, which is located in the nasal cavity and is separate from the olfactory epithelium. The vomeronasal organ contains specialized receptors that are specifically tuned to detect pheromones. Very interesting. Now let's move on to taste. Taste is the detection of dissolved compounds and is mediated by taste buds, which are found in the papillae of the tongue, shown here as dots. There are 5 basic taste modalities you absolutely need to know for the MCAT. We've got sweet, sour, umami, bitter, and salty. Now, if you haven't heard of umami before, it is sort of a meaty taste caused by glutamate. These 5 tastes are then detected by the taste buds, and signals are generated to the brain to tell the brain what it just tasted. Interestingly, the perception of taste is influenced by more than just the chemicals on your tongue. Things like age, your mood, genetics, and any other little thing actually can impact how you perceive the taste. That's why you could give 2 people an identical bowl of Cheerios and one might taste something different than the other because there are different inputs going in. It's not just the food that goes into the perception of taste. Very interesting learning about the senses. Now let's end with somatosensation. It's a mouthful of a word, and it refers to the 4 touch modalities: pressure, vibration, pain, and temperature. The skin contains a variety of receptors that are specialized for detecting these types of stimuli. For example, Merkel discs are responsible for detecting pressure stimuli. And you can see that those are found in the dermis. So that means they're a little bit further underneath your skin. While Meissner corpuscles are responsible for detecting vibration stimuli. And the last important one we want to talk about are these things called free nerve fibers, which are responsible for detecting pain and temperature stimuli. Now, I want to talk briefly about the 2-point threshold. This is the minimum distance between 2 points of stimulation on the skin, as drawn here in red, that will be felt as 2 distinct stimuli. So for example, let's say you got poked here and here, maybe you couldn't tell the difference. So that's not our 2-point threshold. However, if you could measure here and here, and let's say that's 1 centimeter, and that's the smallest difference you can detect, we would say that your 2-point threshold is 1 centimeter. Similar to the 2-point threshold, we have what is called the just noticeable difference. The just noticeable difference is the smallest difference in intensity that can be perceived by an individual. This is highly variable between people. And I also want to mention that nociceptors lead to pain. So nociceptors, nocio means pain, receptors means receptors. So this is how we feel pain. It's another great vocab word the MCAT will test you on. Nociceptors means pain. To finish up, let's talk about our kinesthetic sense. The kinesthetic sense allows us to be aware of the position and movement of our body parts without needing to visually observe them. For example, you can close your eyes and know you're probably still sitting on the couch. This sense is vital for activities that require coordination and balance, such as walking or dancing. In addition to the somatosensory system, our bodies also have a vestibular system to help with this. This is responsible for the balance and spatial orientation. The vestibular system is located in the inner ear, shown here in the bottom left, and is made up of semicircular canals and otolith organs. So we have these 3 semicircular canals at different angles. And essentially, we have fluid sloshing through there when you move your head. And this causes an acceleration of fluid inside, which are going to trigger otolith hair cells. And when we have this differential acceleration, this is going to translate into a bunch of different nerve signals, ultimately telling us about our position in space, aka our kinesthetic sense. Very, very interesting. We know where we are because of fluids sloshing around in our inner ears in our semicircular canals. The vestibular system works closely with our visual system to maintain balance and stability. When we move our heads, our eyes reflexively adjust to keep the object in focus. This reflex is called the vestibulo-ocular reflex and is mediated by the vestibular nuclei in the brainstem. Now you know everything about the senses to do well on the bio-biochem and psych-soc sections of the MCAT. Thank you so much for watching our video, and I will see you next time.